Hey everyone, this is Prince from Desi Programmer. Welcome back to another exciting video. And in this video, we are going to create a full-fledged, full-stack application using Node.js. So just as you can see, this is the project that we are going to build in this one single video. This is a short URL service, but this is not just it. We have social references. We are using charts to visualize the data. Then here we have this beautiful cards which also show the data nicely. And we have a powerful backend. Obviously, everything is coded in Node.js. So this is an example of full stack project because this has a beautiful UI, everything is responsive, and at the same time we have a good backend too. So everything we are going to do in this one single video. So I hope you like it and let's get started. So let's start with setting things up. And for that, in this project, all that I'm going to do is that I'm going to clone this repo, which is Node.js authentication. And in this repo, as you know, we have already handled almost everything which has to do something or other with user authentication, verification, password reset. And since this project too has to deal with user authentication and all, I will simply clone this project. And to do that, I can click on this button and then this gives me this link. So I can simply copy this. Then I'll go back to my terminal and here I'll say git clone. Then I will paste this link and I want to clone everything in a directory named shortly. This is the project name basically. So when I hit enter, everything will be cloned into shortly. Now if I use code not dot, I have to use code shortly, and this will now open up the repo that we have just cloned in this. Now here, as you can see, we have everything that we need. I have to just change this name to shortly because I want the project name to be shortly. We have our start script, we have index.js, and we have entire code that we need for this project. But we still have to set up a few things. Like here I have to set up my Mongo key. Here I have to set up a Google data Google keys. And in this project, although we have Google authentication, but I'm not going to use it. So you can use it. All that you have to do is to set up your client ID and client secret. I'm not going to set up because I'm not going to use it. I will simply create a custom account and I will use that. So I will simply set up this thing that I need. So I will simply put my Mongo URI here. Once I've done that, okay, all that I'll do is that I'll go to index.js file, and here as you can see, we have everything. Everything looks pretty good. So I can go to shortly, and then I will clear the screen, and then I will use npm start to start my server. And okay, we have a problem. It says that okay, node mod is not recognized as an internal external command. Basically, we have not installed our dependencies. So I will go back. As you can see, we need to run this command to install everything that we need. So I'll hit enter, paste anyway, hit enter, and this will install all these things for me. But I still have to install nodemon because that we're not doing here. So once this is done, I'll simply say npm, then I attach d as the dev dependency, and we have nodemon. So if I hit enter, this will install nodemon for me. Okay, by the way, I don't know how I mistook this, but basically all that you can do, since this everything is available here, you can simply do an npm install 2 and everything should work. Okay, I'm sorry, I just missed it. I don't know why. So by the way, once we have done this, I can simply use npm start and this will start the server for me. As since I've already replaced my Mongo URI, everything is good. And if you see this warning, I mean, I did a little bit of research and they said that this is only because of some issue in the latest plugin. So don't worry about that. This is completely okay. This will soon be removed in the next update. Well, now that we have this, all that I have to do, just as expected, go to localhost colon 8000, and yep, now we have this entire stuff up and running. So everything looks pretty good to me. Everything is up and running. Login, sign up, and everything great. Now I actually need to add a couple of static files that I've created. So I'll simply shut this server and I'll create a folder named make directory as static static, and I'll copy those images, whatever that I've created, into this folder. So I have copied everything in my static directory. These are a couple of images that I have, a simple logo and some PNG files. Now I have to go back to my index.js directory. And here I have to make sure that I have set up a static route too, because earlier we weren't using any static files. So now I have app.use. Everything will be rendered from a /static route. And the directory that we want to use as an static is express.static. And here we have _dir name plus /static. So this is a directory from where we are going to render our static files. Everything will be rendered from this /static route. Now if you go back to the browser, we still don't have anything much, like it's still the same. I really hope that it started the server. Let's do that. So now I'll make a couple of changes in my nav bars and all, because earlier it said authentication. Now it will say shortly and all. So I will do that quickly and then we will come back to our project. So I have first changed the navbar. Now we have the navbar is basically a container instead of container fluid. So we have the little spacing, and I also have used internal padding. So now this is my shortly. This is the home, sign up, and login buttons. And also add a couple of more buttons because I want to show a little bit about Bootstrap 5. So I'll go back to my index.js, and as you can see here, we have this simple container that says, basically welcome Deshi programmer. I'll remove these lines of code, and here I first have a row. So we have a division that has a row, and in this row we first have a column. So we have div dot col, a column. So on smaller screens this will take 10 columns. On medium scales this will take 6 columns, and on larger screens also it will take 6 columns. I want to put the text as center, and then I also want the content to be justified center. Okay, we will add that later. Let's just do this, and now I have this simple column. Now here I first have an image, the image that I just added. So static slash images, and then we have this link shorter.png. It has a class of img dash fluid, and then in the alt I will simply say what banner looks good. Then we have an h1. This says shorten any URL, and then below my h1 I'll put another h3 or h2. I think an h2 will be better, and this says and get deep analytics from them. And after this I will have a button, and that button will basically say get started, and once you click on that you can go to your dashboard if you're logged in. So I have a button, and this button, okay, I actually need an A, not a button, so let's put an A simply. And here I'm saying that this says start creating. Now this has a class too. Now I'm not using in Bootstrap button. Should I? Let's say btn dash lg btn dash primary. Okay, I may change this code, but right now if I save this, if you refresh, then here we have an image. It says sort any URL and get deep analytics from them, and then I have this button that says and start creating now. I want this everything at the center. So first of all I have to make sure that this everything is in the center. So in my row I'm saying justify content center. So justify dash content dash center, and I'm using Bootstrap obviously, as you can see, and because I won't be writing that much CSS, then it will take a lot of time. Once I do this, if I refresh, it is in the center. So this looks good, right? Now create any short URL and get deep analytics from them. I also want this button to a bit lower. So I'm saying empty-3, which means give it a margin from top, and this is now a bit below. So this is what I have in this simple form. Now here, as you saw earlier, we also added a features tab, right? So here, as you can see in my home, I also have this another option which says features. This actually should be at the bottom, whether that's login or logout, I don't care. At the bottom we have something that says features. This is a tab, so that stuff will be hashtag features, and then this is not active, so not active, not active. If we save this, if we go back, if you refresh, now we have a features tab. And here, to make that, after this container I have a division. Okay, this division has a class of container again, and I want to give this a padding too, so that my cards don't look very huge. This will have an ID of features. Only then we can come here when the button is clicked. And once we do that, now I need a rows. Now Bootstrap 5 actually gave us a very beautiful way of creating row cards of same width. So first of all I have to create a division, and then this division will have a class obviously of row, but instead of putting columns I can simply say that this row on smaller screens will, each column of this row on smaller screens will take 100%. So a single column of this row on a smaller screens in the entire width. But when you go to medium screen, so I'm saying row dot columns on medium screen. So two columns of this row on medium screens. And I'm saying when you go to large screen, so row dot row dash calls dash lg dash 3. So I'm saying on large screen, so 3 columns of this particular row. And then we have to give a gapping. So what will be the gap between the columns? And then I am saying justify content center, so that everything comes at the center. Justify content center. Now here we don't have to give our columns a classes for handling a different sizes on different devices. So basically we don't have to say column 10 and 12 and something as such. We can simply say division dot column and that's it. Now we have a column and this will automatically adjust accordingly. And then I need to create a card. So division, the class will be card here. Okay, and then in our card we first have a card body. So division dot card dash body. And don't ask me why I remember this. Most of the time I use Bootstrap for my projects. Like, you do what you get paid for. And most of the time, because writing custom CSS takes a lot of time, and when you're working, if you're saying that I will write custom CSS for an actual product, then it will little take a lot of time. And normally clients say that, hey, I want to enter a project in this time. So I'm like, great, we have Bootstrap, we have Material UI. Anyway, now we have card title, and then here I have to say easy analytics. So these are just simple card titles. I will later add them. Like we have a P that has a class of card dash text, and here I can simply say login 25. Save this. We'll go back to our browser. Let's refresh, and now as you can see, we have a card. So this looks beautiful, right? Now I also want to add Bootstrap icons here. So let's go to our new tab. Let's search for Bootstrap icons. And then here I want to click on install because I want to see how you can install it. Great. I can click on this install, and here as you see we have a CDN. I will simply copy this and I'll paste this CDN here. I'll also rename this authentication to shortly. Okay, save this. And now if you see, we have this shortly. Great. Now here as you can see, we need a couple of icons. So I'll simply grab an icon from here. Let's say a chart. So let's see if we have a chart lines. Let's search. Come on, go on the top. We will search for chart, and this we will get chart lines. This looks good. Bar chart line. Let's take this. I'll simply copy this, and here in my card as you can see, I'll simply put this here. So above my card body I'm putting this. So basically this represents that, hey, I'm on the place of images, and this is my simple icon. And I also want to give this a styling. So we have a style, and the style is simple. It says font size will be 3em on devices. If I save this, if I go back here, if I refresh, now we have a font size. But remember, this everything has to be center. So for my card I'm saying text center, and giving a h-100 make sure that this card has 100% of the height. So if there's any other card which has more height, it will take the same height as this card. Once I've done that, I also want to change the color. So I will simply grab all the BIs .bi, and I'm saying that they will have a different color. So the color which will be, and basically I have already I remember the hash code. It was 0003 and FF. So this is the blue color that we are using for our logo. If I refresh now, this is the color that we get. Looks good, right? I'll simply copy this thrice. Okay, I won't do anything changes. So this is the column that we were working with. Simply copy this thrice. And now if I save this, if you go back to a browser, we refresh, looks good, right? Click on features, and here these are the features of my website. I'll also use a simple partial. I just want to show a simple use of partial, nothing much. So basically how we can extend. Now we have multiple pages, and I want to show some footer on multiple pages. Okay, so what will I do? I'll simply create a partials. Okay, we already have partials. That looks great. And here we have footer.js. Okay, I'll simply paste this code for my footer. And now here I need to call that partial. So our templating tags, and to call a partial we use a dash, and then we have to say include, and here we have to give the path relative to this file. So that path is // and partials / footer.egs. Save this, and let's go back to our browser. Let's refresh, and now we have a footer. Looks great, right? Okay. Once we have done this, as you can see, we still have all these pages working, right? Like login is working, sign up is working, and obviously we need to change this I mean, what do we say? We have to change this. So I'll do that quickly. I won't waste your time. I'll do that quickly. Now that we have done this, if we go here, if we refresh, if you go to login, okay, everything has been changed here. Looks pretty good. Now, login is pretty okay, and we don't have any problem here. But in sign up, we have a field which is choose a username. And for this project, I don't want this field. So this is a simple demonstration of how to work if you don't want a field. So basically, you have this repo which says you have to work with usernames too. But I'm saying that, hey, I don't want it. I want to remove it. So how do we do that? Well, it's simple. We just have to be a little cautious. First of all, we have to remove that from our pages. So I'll go to signup.ezs, and here, as you can see, we have this particular division which says choose a username. If I remove this, now we are good. But when this form will submit, we may have an issue. So let's go to the route where this form is submitting, which is /signup. So let's go to controller routes.js. Now in /signup, as you can see, we are trying to grab a username. So let's remove that here. Great. Then here we won't have this. And since we don't have this here, as you can see, we have all the fields are required. This is completely okay. But wherever we need a username, see, these are the places where we have something called as username. So we have to remove that. Okay, great. So first of all, this won't be here. And since this is not here, we have to also change it from the data model. Remember that. But before that, let's remove this user from here. And since I've done that, I don't need this or, which means I don't need this. You can even remove everything and simply put a email is equal to email. So now I'm saying just check for email, and then we are good to go. Okay, I don't think I need this, right? Okay, so just check for email and then get the data. We don't have any problem here. We're not checking for username at all. Okay, and then everything looks pretty good, right? Here we were rendering username, so I'll remove that part too. Okay, we have to anyway, I will remove entire profile. I don't need it at all actually. Okay, once I've done that, I have to go back to my data model. So I will go to my model /user.js, and here I don't need this username. So let's remove this. Once I've done that, I'll save, and then I think I have to go to my Google auth.js, and here, as you can see, we are putting up a username, so I have to remove it from here too. Once we have done that, now it looks like we are good to go. If I save this, there is no issue. So if I go to browser, if I refresh, now it looks like we're good to go. Great. Yes, obviously, great. Having done that, I will first try to sign up, and also we will basically check if it is working good or not. Now, I have opened up my Mongo Atlas, and as you can see, we have this simple database, which is a collection, which is Shortly. So here, all that I have to do is to create a user. If I create a user, everything successful, we will have users list here. So let's go back to Shortly, and here I'll put my email, simply the single email that I always use, prince@gmail.com, because it's simple. By the way, this is not my email at all. I'll put a password, the easiest one that anybody can hack. And now I'll simply click on register. I go back to my login page, and this is basically an indication that, hey, everything was successful. If I refresh, you will see that now we have a user with the name, with the same email, okay, and a password which is obviously encrypted. So that's a no-go. Anyway, once I have done that, I can go to Shortly. I can put that email which I just used, so prince@gmail.com, and I can put a password. But remember, even if this is successful, if you go to routes.js, you will realize that we are basically sending the user to /profile, but this route doesn't exist at all. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to rename this route to /dashboard, because that's the route where we are going to handle everything. So I'll first create a route. Okay, I will name this as router.get, and we have /dashboard, and then this will obviously take a request and a response, and here we just have this. Okay, and I'm simply say rest dot render. We are going to simply render a page, and that page will be dashboard. So basically we don't have a dashboard.egs. Okay, so not as of now at least. So let's create it. I'll go to my views, and not in screenshots. I'll go to my views, and here I'll create a file. We will name this as dashboard.egs, and assuming that the spelling is same both everywhere, I'll simply add some code to it so that looks good, like basically the nav bar and all stuff. Nothing nothing much. Basically, let me just simply go to next.egs. I'll simply grab this. I'll come back to my dashboard.egs. I'll paste it, and I need my footer. Obviously, I don't need this card here, and since I don't need this card, I don't need this part too. I just need this, which will show features. Okay, I don't even have to show features here. So I'll remove this, and this will be changed to dashboard. So yeah, this is the font that I'm using here. It's named Kulim Park. So I'll just copy this in my body, and here we have pasted it. Looks good. At least looks good to me. Everything has been restarted. Everything looks good. So if I click on, if I refresh this, we'll have to refresh or else we will get an issue of CSRF token. Prints at gmail.com, and here my password will be 123456. If I click on login, now I get an error that says class can't go to slash profile. Come on, I should have changed that too. I'll click on this profile, and then everywhere where we are redirecting to slash profile, also change that to dashboard. So everything looks pretty good. These are the two places only where we are sending to profile. So I will set dashboard, and not just these. Actually, if we go to account routes.js, then you will see that we are actually sending to profile a lot of times. So here, now remember, this is rendering the profile page. You don't have to change it. We have to only change the redirect part. So every time where we redirect, we will change it. Come on. Change to prof dashboard. Okay, redirect dashboard, and then redirect to dashboard. Come on, do we have it? We don't have it anywhere else. All right. Now that this is done, also remember that all the errors that we are showing in our profile page, including this verified, this email sent, and this type of error and all, this we have to put there too. So I'll simply copy this entire part, and then I will go to my dashboard.egs, and here, as you can see, after this everything, after the nav bar, I'm simply putting up a division which has a container, and then this division has all these errors that we're showing. So if you ever redirect here with any of these errors, we won't have an issue. Now if I try to go to dashboard, obviously I will have an issue. So I will have to first go to login, because since that route is not authenticated, we are getting an error. So all that I have to do is to go to routes.js, and here I have to make sure that this calls a authenticated route. So I have to say check auth. And also in my dashboard.egs, I am sending this value which is verified. So I have to also grab that value and I have to send that too. So here verified is going to come from request.user.is verified. And since we are making sure that only authenticated user can access this route, we will always have access to a request.user. Having done that, we will save it. We will go back to our browser. We'll refresh. Everything looks pretty good. All that we have to do is to log in, prints at gmail.com, and now we have 123456. Click on login, and here we go to dashboard. It says, hey, we have an error, logged is not defined. Great, makes sense. We have to define a logged value too, which will say whether we are logged in or not. And since this route is always sent for logged in users, we have to say that logged is always true. We don't have to check that at all. Okay, great. Come on. I have to remove these parentheses. Let's save this. Let's go back. Let's refresh. Now I have to log in again. Great. Let's click on login, and if we go to dashboard, great. Now this looks amazing. Okay, now we don't obviously have all the options here, but since we are at our dashboard and we have this logout and all, this means that we have successfully authenticated a user, and we have created this dashboard where user can go once they have logged in. And if I log out and then I try to access the dashboard route, then as usual I will go to this error page which says, hey, you have to log in. You can just access that authenticated route. Everything looks pretty good as of here. Right now, let me take a small break, and I'll come back and I will add the form for handling creating routes and then all the dashboard and all. Okay, so let's continue this again. Actually, I took a break of almost 12 hours because it was already 4 a.m. and I was too tired to keep recording. But as of now, we have already created this basic dashboard. So this is the stuff that we have. And now all that I have to do is to add a form here where people can submit their URL and their short slug, and then we will create a URL based on that. So first of all, let's create a form, and then we will talk about creating data models and everything. So here, as you can see in my dashboard.egs, I have this simple container. And this container has this couple of stuff which will show errors accordingly. So now here I have to create a form. So I have a division of row. Okay, and here I have to paste a form. So the form will come under a class div dot in this class we are going to have 12 columns on smaller screens. On medium screens, I will take 8 columns, so column dash md dash 8, and on larger screens, I will take 6 columns, column dash lz dash 6, and then yeah, that's it as of now. I'm giving this an internal padding of 5 widths, and it should be in center. Now here I have a form, so I'll simply copy a form and then I will paste our stuff there. So let's go to the login.egs. Then I'll copy this form from here. Where is it? Yeah, this is the form that we need. I'll simply copy this. We'll go to dashboard.egs. I'll paste it here. Now I will change everything accordingly. Like I don't need this button right here. Okay. I don't need this forgot password button. I don't need this register now button. I don't need this continue with Google button. And this value shouldn't be login. This value should be create URL. All right. Yeah, looks great. And then here in this division, which has a label for password, this I will change to short. Okay. And then I will also change the name to short. I'll change the type to text. I also change the ID to short, and here this will be changed to short. Okay, so now this looks good to me. If we go back to our terminal, everything looks good here. We just have this warning, so ignore it. If you go there, if you refresh, okay, we have an issue. It says CSRF is not defined. So since we are rendering CSRF in this form, we have to send CSRF token to. I'll go to routes.js, and here as you can see, I'll simply copy CSRF from any place. Although I remember what I have to do, but why should I type that? After logged, here is my CSRF token that I have to render. And now if I go back to browser, if I refresh, I have to. So now we have this simple form, and this is how it looks. I mean, it looks pretty good to me. I just want to keep it in the center and give this form a background so that it looks a little nice. So let's go back to our code. Let's go back to our dashboard.egs. So in this form, I'm saying that this should have MX Auto will basically keep this column at center. And then I'm saying that this should have a background of white. So I think I have a class for that, BZ light. So let's do BZ dash light, and let's see if the changes are visible or not. If we refresh, then now this is in the center with a light background. This looks like, okay, we have a form here where we have enter long URL, enter short URL. This is the short plug, and then you can create a URL. So yeah, this looks pretty good to me. So now let's go here to our form, and remember the fields that we are using. So we are using a short and we are using a original. So I'll go to my routes.js. I can either create a new route here, let's say sort.js, which will handle everything, but let's just put it here. So here I have a router dot get slash create, and this will take a request and a response. Okay, this route has to be authenticated, so we will also put check auth. And now, okay, we have to save this to database. So for that, we need a data model too, right? So let's go and create a data model. So I'll simply go to my models and I'll create a new file. I'll name this as urls.js. Okay, url.js, anything is good. Then here, obviously, I have to write the code. So const mongoose is equal to require mongoose, and then I have to create a schema. So I will say const url schema is equal to new mongoose dot schema, and then our URL will have certain stuff. So first of all, I need a parameter named owned. So this will tell which user owns the URL. So it will be a type of string, and the required is now true. By the way, I will talk about this data model later on once we add one data to this, and I will explain what are the different data models that you can use in this scenario and how they will affect your code and performance. So we have a required which will always set true. So you can't create a URL if there is no owner. So basically all the authenticated users only can create a URL. Then we have a original URL, and this will again be a type string, and this is also required. So required is set to true. The next thing that I need here is the slug. So this is the sort value that we'll be storing, and this also has to be provided by user. I mean, we can create on our own. That's very basic code, but let's leave it now. So type is string, and this should be unique basically. Okay, so unique, unique is true, and this is also required. Without short you can't put a URL, so required is also set to true. The next thing that you need is widgets. So this will store the total number of widgets that we got here. So this will have a type of number, okay, and it will have a default value of 0. So even if we don't provide while creating one, this will assign it a value of 0. In the same way, we have different widgets for different references. So right now I'm going to add only 3 social references: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can extend this code to obviously add as many social references as you want, like LinkedIn, Twitter, and whatnot. So right now I have these widgets only, and here we have widgets from Facebook, then we have widgets from Instagram, then we have widgets from YouTube. So this is what we have. Everything is number, the default value is 0. Once I've done that, I have to export this. So module dot exports, and this is equal to mongoose dot model, and the model name here is going to be URL. So this will create a collection of URLs, and the schema that we're using is obviously URL schema that we just created. So now we have a URL schema named as URLs. Everything looks pretty good to me. Let's go back to routes, and now we have to call this URL schema. So as you can see here, we have user. So let's say that this is URL, and this too will be URLs. Okay, I'll name this URLs so that it will be easy to access. So well, once you get a call to /create, now you have to check a couple of stuff. So first, this has to be authenticated, that we have handled through middleware. Next, I have to say that I need 2 constant values. So I need a original. What is the name? I have to check again. Let's see. So we have original and we have short. So I'm going to grab original and I'm going to grab sort from my form. This is going to come from request dot body. Okay, next thing that I have to do is to check if this value exists or not, and these are the checks that I sometimes skip and sometimes I use. So it's completely up to you. If you wanted to actually push something like this in production, you will have to actually put these checks for either checking if it's a valid URL or not. Since this is just a tutorial, I'll just keep it, or I may update the code in the repo. So once you have done this, if there is no original or short, then we have to render the page again. So since we have to render this dashboard, I'm saying render the dashboard. So these are the values that we already need, but now we need another error value, and this will be that empty fields. Okay, so this is the thing that we are doing if these are empty. Else in other cases, if these are not empty, well, then we have to actually create a short URL based on this data. So now I'm saying that I need a URL object. So var URL, well, let's just simply create one. Okay, URLs dot find one. The reason why I want to find one is because I want to make sure that this doesn't exist already. So find one. So something that has a slug that matches this particular short, try to find a data. So we will either get error or we will get data. Now, just as we have always done, if there is error, throw the error. If there is data, that means something exists. If there is no data, that means we can create one. If there is data, I will simply paste this here too. So if there is data, I will simply change the error message. So now the error message will be try different short URL. This exists. Okay, but what if there is no data? If there is no data that's present, so I have to simply say URLs and I have to create a URL object here. So we will have a couple of stuff here, right? So we will first get our original URL, which will come from original. Then we will have our slug, which will come from, short, and then we will have owned. So the person who owns this will come from request dot user dot email. And then we have to simply call save on this, and this might give some error. So let's get error, and yeah, everything looks pretty good. I will simply redirect to dashboard. So rest dot redirect to /dashboard. Great. So I think this is everything that we need for actually creating a short URL service. I hope this works. And okay, by the way, was there an else case? If or else, yeah, this we have handled. Okay, so let's go back to our browser. Let's do this again. So now that we have this, as you can see, if I don't enter any value and actually Now that I remember it, I have to even set this to slash short, that we don't have an error. And now if I simply refresh this, if I don't enter any value, if I simply click on create URL now, then okay, we get cannot post short. I think I have created that as a get route, right? Yep, my bad, my bad. Post. Now if I click on this short URL, let's hope if there are no, okay, it says cannot post slash short. Why? Okay, I'm calling create, not short. Come on. So now if I click on create, then we will get this error that says empty field. And why this showing like this? Let's see. So if there is an error, if the error is undefined, we are showing that in success. Really? Okay, let's change this to danger. Now if we have an error, it will be in a danger, right? If we continue, we will get an error empty fields. So okay, this looks good. If you want this to be only for the particular form, so we can do that too. We can simply grab this and put it here in this form. So now we will good to go. Let's copy this and let's paste it here. The reason why I'm copying it, because since we are rendering something from that what do we call it, profile 2, that's why I'm putting it here. Now if you refresh, continue, then now you get an error here, error empty fields. Great. So let's remove this thingy now. Now that we have handled this, it's pretty obvious that this is working. So if I enter some real data, we will actually get some data. So let's enter some real data. So this is my long URL, desiprogrammer.com. This is my short slug, desi. Let's click on create URL. And if we don't get anything, that means our URL creation is successful. So now let's try to understand the data model a little bit. And for that, I will first open the database. I'll go to MongoDB Atlas. So now that I have logged in into my MongoDB Atlas, as you can see, this is the collection that I'm working on, okay, shortly. And now this has three collections. We have a reshare tokens. Then we have URLs, which will be a list of all the URLs that have been created. And then we have this, which is users. So these are the users that we have. Now talking about the data model, okay. So first of all, some of you might think that, hey, since we have to render the data, like there are three different things that we have to do right now. Okay. So, okay, let's create a README. Let's remove this, everything right here. So there are three different things that we have to do right now. First of all, we have to show all the URLs that have been created by a user. Okay. So once we are talking about this thing, so now if you want to show all the URLs that is created by a user, the performance will be better, obviously, if this document has a list of all the URLs that the user has created. So if you look at this perspective, this model may look wrong, right? Because now if you want to, now let's say I have 100 URLs and I want to grab all the URLs created by a user A, then I have to read throughout the 100 documents, and then I will fetch all those documents that have been created by user A, which might not be good in terms of performance. But we also have to do something else, which is to grab a URL, okay? And then we have to add, basically we have to increase the widgets count accordingly, and then we have to redirect to the original URL. And this process has to be done even for non-authenticated users. So it's not an authentication, obviously is not necessary for redirection. So now here the problem is that if we create a data model according to this, then now when you have to actually redirect, then now you will have to go to every user, then you will have to go through their entire a collection of URLs, and then if you find one, you will have to update the widgets and then redirect accordingly. So there are two different data models that could be available in this option. First one is to create a list of URLs for every user, or to create a different list of URLs so that redirection is easy. And there are two different works, so one of them has to suffer. And according to our project as of now, our main priority is that to redirect the user, and that's what we are going to get a lot more. Instead of people logging in and checking their performance, we are going to get a lot more redirections. So that's why this model is accordingly. And if your project scales up, now at that condition everything changes a lot. Right now, if your project scales up, you can even keep, let's say, IDs of all the URLs that I have created or anything as such. Right now, even if we have 1,000 URLs, it won't be a problem fetching all the URLs created by a single user. That's why this is the data model that I am working on. This is the data model that I'm choosing. And these are the things that you have to always consider while working on a project. Most of the time, people don't think about scalability and performance. So this is why you should always think a little bit about the data models. Now that we have done this, we have to handle two more things. First of all, we have to make sure that the user can successfully redirect if they are making call to a short slug. Second thing, that we have to populate all the URLs created by a single user here on the dashboard along with charts for basic visualization. So first of all, to redirect the user, we will have to go back to our code again. And here, as you can see, um, to redirect, if you see, there was a small problem that I was even talking during the live stream. If some of you would have joined, you would have known. But the problem was that if you see, if you take a look right here, okay. So since I'm calling this last method right here, okay, if I try to code a slug here, then this will give you an error. What will be the error? I'll show you. So I'm saying that this initial route can expect a slug, okay, but this is not necessary. That's why a question mark. So now my initial home route can expect a short slug, which is optional. So now we have to make sure that we render data accordingly, right? So first of all, we have to check if we have a short slug or not. So if request dot params dot slug is not equal to undefined, come on, if this is not undefined, in that case we will have to handle this stuff. If this is undefined, then that means there is no short slug. So if this is already undefined, in that case I have to just do this thing, okay. I'm simply putting it here. So if this is undefined, check if the user is authenticated or not, then send the logged value to true, else send the logged value to false. But if this is available, if a short slug is available, then now we have to do something else. So now we have to grab this slug, and then we have to append the value, and then we have to do stuff accordingly. So first of all, we have to grab the data. So I can say that okay, let's make it asynchronous so that it looks more cleaner. So I'm saying var data is going to come from await urls dot find one, and the find one's value will be we are going to grab a slug based on request dot params dot slug. So we want to find one URL which has a slug that matches the request dot params dot slug. So now if there is data, that means we found something, else if there is no data, that means we did not find anything. So if there is data, then what we have to do, we have to first increase the widgets. So data dot widgets is equal to data dot widgets plus one. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have simply said data dot widgets plus plus, right? Let's see, this still looks a bit clear. And now we have to grab the reference. So we have to say var ref, and this will come from request dot query, and we have to search for a key which is ref, and the references that I have are small fb, small ig, small yt. You can add this list more for Twitter, LinkedIn, and whatever you want. So if there is a if there is a reference, then we have to do something. If there is no reference, we don't have to do anything. So since if there is no reference, we don't have to do anything. We won't write the code, but only if there is a reference, we have to do something. So we will write the code. So I'm simply saying switch this reference, and in the switch we have couple of data. So we have a constant data, sorry, case. So if the case is fb, then we have to do something, okay. So if the case is fb, I'm saying data dot widgets fb is equal to, sorry, plus plus, okay. Let's do an is equal to data dot widgets fb plus 1, okay. And then we have to break this. In the same way, I have to check for other values too. I will simply paste this twice. So if this is IZ, then we have to increase the Instagram values. So IG, and here to IG. And then if this is YT, then we have to change the YouTube's value. So this will be YT, not capital YT, YNT, and then YT. So this will handle everything. But for this data, if the reference does not exist, then we have to even redirect and say that there is an error, okay. So first of all, once we do this here, once we do this, I have to say await, save the data, whatever the changes that we have made, and then redirect. So res dot redirect to data dot original URL. So this is handled here. But if this is not available, then we have to send an error, okay. So now if there is not available here, then we have to send an error, right? Okay, so I will simply copy one of this. Let me put it here. So now here we are going to give an error too. We have an error which is not found. Great. Yeah, we will simply pass the error as an error as true. Just leave it as it is. Now we have handled the short slug, but there will be a problem, and I'll show you what that is. First of all, let's go back to here, and now if I call slash dashboard, we come here to the main route. Now this is not possible because if even if I try to call slash login, we still come to the home route. If I try to call anything, we come to the home route instead. If I try to call a valid short slug, which is slash dc, then now I will get redirected to dc programmer. So redirection is working perfectly, but our constant routes, they can't be accessed. So that's a problem. The reason why it's happening is because when I call login, now this is treating this login also as a short slug. So there are two ways of handling it. One is the messy way. So if you talk about the messy way, then we have to put here constant. So here we have to check every time that if slug is equal to login, then do something else. If slug is equal to sign up, then do something else. And easy ways to make sure that this route is at the end. In that way, this route won't be called. This route will be called only if these routes are not available. So if I put this at the end, even after the user routes, so now the problem will basically go. So now if I call login, you can go to login. If I call sign up, you can go to sign up. If I call home, you can go to home. And at the same time, if I call a valid slug, then you get redirected to that particular website. So this is a very small problem that I think people have while coding short URL service. Rest everything looks pretty simple to me. Now let's handle error that we have simply sent to our home route. So for that, let's go to index.egs. And here, as you can see, we don't have anything to show error, right? So in this container, I want to show error. Okay. Where should we show? I think here an error will be better. So here I have to show the error. And since the key is error, I can simply go to dashboard.egs. I can grab this entire error value. I can copy this. And in my index.egs, I can simply paste it here. Okay. If error is not equal to undefined, then and if the value of error is true, and here we don't have an error, here we have to hard code the value, then I will simply say that okay, I'm simply putting can't find the short URL. I may later put up some good error. So let's see DESIA. And now you will get this error that says, hey, can't find the short URL. So now every time you try to call something which is not available, this will say, hey, can't find the short URL. Okay, if we call Google, we get an error. Oh, sorry. I actually have Google authentication, so that will work. If I call Google A, we get the error. Okay, so this looks pretty good. This is working. Now let's go back to our dashboard and let's try to create our dashboard in a better way. So in a way where we can actually show all the routes that we have created there. So for that, first of all, I have to grab all the URLs which are owned by me, and then we can do that. So in my dashboard, first of all, let's go to dashboard. Here in dashboard, now since we are always calling this route only for authenticated user, we simply have to say URLs dot find, and this will find all the URLs which are owned by a user which has the email of the logged in user. So request dot user dot email, and once this is done, we will get a lot of data, right? So let's simply keep it error and data. I don't think it's a good practice to sometimes use callbacks and sometimes use async await. So next time, I think I will always be using um, just only async await or always callback functions. Right now, I will even change that in repo, I think, or maybe I should just keep it as it is so that there's no problem in copying the code. Well, here, if we have error, throw the error. But if we have data, okay, so we'll always have data, right? Basically, even if the data is 0, we can check that in the front end itself. So I'm saying just render this page, okay? But here we have another data which is URLs, and that will come from this data. So now we have URLs, and URLs will come from this data. Come on. Now I can go back to my dashboard.egs, and here I can handle that stuff, okay? So first of all, let's try to put something in dashboard or not. Let's try to put something here, okay? After this container that I had here, where's the container? Here. I'll have this another container, okay? And this will be my dashboard actually. So I have a division with a class of container, okay? And This container will have some spacing because I want each URL to take entire width space. So now here I will have a simple h2 and I will say your URLs and performance. Okay, this should be in that center. So I'll also give it a class of text center. I won't give the entire container a class of text center, just this heading. And then here we can now work with the URL, right? So let me simply say that if URLs, okay, it will always be available, but if the length of that array is not equal to 0, only then we want to show something. Else if it is equal to 0, that means we don't have any data, right? So first of all, I have to put templating tags here everywhere. So these are the starting ones and these are the end ones. But in the else case, if there is no data, I'm simply putting an h2 tag and I'm saying no URLs created by you. Okay, and a little sad emoji. Now let's go back to dashboard. So for that, I have to obviously log in. Okay, so let's go to login, and here I will enter my login and my password. Now here, as you can see, we get your URLs and performance, but I don't get. Okay, I don't get. Okay, basically I have created a URL, so I won't get that, right? I have to actually show a URL. Let's go to dashboard again, and since I already created a URL, I have to show the URL. So for that, I will say URLs dot for each. So for each URL. So for each URL, here I have to show something. So first of all, let's close and start and close these tags. And now for each of the URL, I want to create a division which will have a column. Now this everything should be wrapped in a row so that I can have everything in a single column. So after the h2, I'm grabbing this everything. Okay, and I'll put this in a row. And now this row is of the type where I am saying that take this row and in small columns, everything should be singled. Okay, and I want to give this a gapping of 4 values, whatever that should be, and everything should be at the center. So this will make sure that no matter what screen we are talking about, there will always be any column will always be taking up 100% of the width. So then we have a column, and this column will have its own data. So we have a container here, and this container will, first of all, it will have a shadow so that it looks good. It will even be a little bit rounded, so rounded as 3. I think the spelling is correct. And also want to give this a background so that it doesn't look white just as the other codes. And then here I'll simply paste this stuff that I've already created. Okay, so this is the list of cards that we have. Basically it is another container. Okay, this has a row. We have set the justification to around. As you can see, I'm simply calling the URL, this URL, and then the widgets from Facebook, widgets from Instagram, and this I will change to widgets from YouTube. Okay, this is everything that this is basically simple HTML bootstrap code, and I've also coded some basic CSS. Let me paste that too. Just a little bit of card and custom border. Now if you go and refresh, you can see that we get this simple dashboard which says total widgets, Facebook widgets, Instagram widgets, YouTube widgets. And this is as simple as it looks. If you go here, if you take a look at it, these are simple cards. Okay, and they all will always take 12 columns in smaller screens. On medium columns, 3 cards will be available, so 4 columns, and on larger screens 3 columns, so basically 4 cards will be available. They're having a margin bottom of 3 so that they don't stuck to each other on smaller screens. And then I have given them a ratio. So this makes sure that they're always in this square form in a ratio of 1:1, no matter what the size is. And then we have a division with the display of flex, and everything will be then here in the center always. So even if you go it small, you will see that they will always be in this square form, no matter what the size is. So this is how you can see the URL. So total widgets, Facebook widgets, Instagram widgets, YouTube widgets. If I try to increase them, then I have to simply say localhost colon 8000 / desi. So now this will redirect me to desi programmer. If I refresh, now the total widgets is 3. If I simply go back and if I say localhost / desi (ref is equal to fb, not gb, Facebook. So now this will basically again redirect me there, but now you will have a total widgets of 4 and widgets from Facebook will be 1. The same time, if I say that this is coming from IZ, then now again I will be sent to desi programmer, the total widgets will become 5, the widgets from Instagram will become 1. And at the same time, if I say that the widget is coming from YouTube, then now this will become the total visit will become 6 and the widgets from YouTube will become 1. And you can simply just paste anything, and as you can see, that will keep increasing. So this looks pretty good to me. Everything is neat and clean and working in the best way it can. The next thing that we have to actually do is that we have to add charts.js. So for that, I will simply go to browser. I will call charts.js. Okay, I think I have already used it right here. So I have to use it. Let's go to website. Let's see if we can find a CDN. Okay, so get started. So in the installation section, as you can see, we have a CDN. Okay, so let's go to CDNs, and I want the minimum.js and min.css. So this is the min.css. I'll copy the script tag and then I will paste it in my dashboard.egs. So here in my dashboard.egs, I want another script which will be this charts.js, and then I want another css2 which will be chart.css. So here we have chart.css. We have minimum, yes, we have min too. Now let's put minified. It's not minimum, basically it's minified. So let's save this, and okay, let's refresh. Now we have that. Now I have to make sure that I show some chart. So for that, I will simply write some code to simply show a chart. Now here I want to show this chart to be available in an entire row in the center. So for that, in my dashboard.egs, I have to go here, and in all these containers, as you can see, for each of the where it is. So for each of these URLs, we have this division, right? So after this division, I want another division which should have a class of row, and this division, I'm saying that take a division again, and this will have a 12 columns on smaller screens. It will have 6 columns on medium scales, and it will have 4 columns on larger screens. Let's say 5 columns. And then here we have a canvas, and I will give this canvas an ID which will be, let's say, my chart. Okay, let's save this, and this I will set to justify content center so that this is always at center. Now, having done that, here I have to write my code again for actually populating a chart. So we have a script. No src, I have to write here only. So in my script right now, I'm simply writing code. So I can say var let's say chart ct is equal to document dot get element by id, and my id is my chart. I hope this is correct. My chart with a capital C. Yes, my chart. And then I have to get the context as 2D. So because it's a canvas, so get context. Come on, why is this not working? xt. This will be 2D, 2 small d. This is a canvas concept. I'm simply putting up here for visualization. If you can't understand it, we can do a crash course on charts.js, or we can do a crash course on canvas. Anyway, my chart. Now this will be equal to new chart, chart, and this will come from a capital C, chart, and this chart will be populated here at ct, and this will have its options. So these are the options for our card chart. So first of all, the type that I want to be should be a donut, not donut, although it has a z. So d o u g h n u t, and then the data that we need here. So this is the data that we have. So first of all, we need labels. So my labels are going to be what should we put? Should we put Facebook, Instagram, widgets, and none? Okay, so I will say total. Then we have Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Next thing that I need is data sets. So data sets, and then this will have its own options. It will be list. So here, as you can see in the data sets, we have a label again. So this will be a chart label. I can say widgets, distribution. Then we have data. Right now I'm putting random values. Okay, let's say 12, 1, 2, 3, 1. Sorry, 3. So total to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This is the data. And then I need background color. So I'll simply copy and paste the background color that I've already copied according to a brand's color. Now if we save this, if you go back to a browser, if we refresh, we should see a basic chart. So these are the total widgets that we got. These are the widgets from Facebook, from Instagram, and from YouTube. Looks pretty good to me. I think I've just copied it outside my container. That's why it looks like this. So let's do that. Let's fix that basically. I think I should give my canvas a width and height. It will be better as per documentation. So width 400, and let's give it a height of 400 too, so that it looks a bit quite square. Now if we refresh, okay, yeah, now this looks good actually. And then let's put something else. So let's put a way of copying the short URLs too. So for that, here I need a tag. So a, this will have let's say visit short URL, and then the href will come from whatever the URL that is. Make sure you have to put it here. So if you have a domain, you have to put the domain. If since we have an http, so http colon double slash localhost colon 8000, and then here we have the sort slug, which will come from the URL. So is equal to URL and then the slug. And now I have to even give this classes to look like a button. So I have to say btn and vtm dash primary. This should make sense. Okay, if you refresh now, I'll simply give this a class of mx auto to actually center this. And then let's just give it some spacing too. So here in for this href, I'm saying that this should have some spacing from top. And now if you refresh, okay, now this looks good. You can visit the short URL. This looks good. The actual problem arises when, as you can see here, this data is different. So we have total visits of 7, but this is 12 because we have hard coded. But I have to create one more URL so that I can show you the actual problem that arises here. So I will simply code from Google. So HTTPS. Then in the sort slug, I can say search. Okay. Now let's create create URL. Now as you can see, now we have two URLs. Okay, but this chart won't show. Since our chart 2 is static, that won't show here, and this is a problem. Now here there are two solutions. Solution number 1 is that here when you are rendering your dashboard from routes.js, you can create a list of all the IDs and a list of all the data sets, and then can render from here itself. Or you can do that in the front end itself. Now in front end it looks a bit messy, but since right now we don't have a lot of JavaScript code on the front end, we can write it, or else it will look really a bit messy in the front end. So first of all, I have to make sure that the IDs are different, and since we already get a ID parameter, we don't have to worry much about it, right? So I'll simply copy this URL slug. Instead of hard coding an ID, I'll paste it, and now this will be an underscore ID that MongoDB gives me. So since now I have grabbed ID from here, all that I can do is that I can go back, I can go here. Now I can show this. But also remember, if we don't have any URL, there is no point of rendering charts, right? So we have to make sure that the URL length is 0, we don't do anything. And then for each URL, we have to do this entire stuff. So first let's do this, and then we will simply put the URLs.length and .for each with our templating tag. So I'll simply paste this. And now since these are a single quotes, I have to make sure that this is double quote, or that this will give an error. And this too should be underscore ID. In the same way here, these widgets, this data too should come from there. So this is the first one that we have is total. So this should be widgets. The second one that we have is widgets from Facebook. So this should be widgets with a capital of FB. The third one that we have is widgets from IZ. So this should be widgets and IZ, which is basically Instagram. And the last but not the least, we have widgets from YouTube. So this should be widgets YT. Now if you save this, this could be populated. But since we have to do this for entire URLs, I'll simply go here. I'll copy this code. Okay, and we'll paste it here. So for each URL, we have to do this, and the same way we have to end that templating tag too. Okay, so remember this. I'll simply, okay, let me just end one and I'll copy that here. So here we have starting templating tags and then ending tags, and this we have to do twice for this. And remember, this actually has a what do we say, parenthesis too, so we have to end it like this. Now this will always show error because EGS won't recognize this. This is basically HTML. If you use EGS, this may not show error, but normally this will show error. Now if you refresh, as you can see, you still have a single chart, right? Okay, this is still have a problem. Since everything is 0 here, this has a problem. Let's visit the short URL here. Let's go back. And now as you can see, now we get a value of total. The data set, if you have a data set, everything will look good, right? Let's copy this link. And now let's try to visit this link with different parameters. So question ref is equal to FP. And now as you can see, we have a total value of 2 and the widgets from Facebook is 1. So this is what our entire project has been all about. This is what this entire tutorial has been all about. We have coded a short URL service, and this short URL service can basically even use charts to visualize your total widgets and the share of widgets. Basically, if you want, you can add a parameter, remove a parameter, and obviously feel free to customize this project as per your needs, the need of put in production, or maybe put something in your portfolio. So that's pretty much it from my side in this video. And I also think these things are working. Actually, if I click on your send email, you can see we get this message which says verification email sent successfully, valid only for 20 minutes and all. So this is what we are sending basically, right? Everything is looking good, everything is working. All that I have to do is to make sure that we actually have put some values for sending emails, and we actually have put keys and places correctly. As you can see, as of now we don't have any of these. If you go to send mail.js, these are basically empty, so obviously we'll get error. So everything looks pretty good to me. I will change the data accordingly, and I will also put this to Git. As you can see, this is already a Git repo, and if you ever come in a situation where you have to put everything as a new Git repo, simply go to terminal and use rm-r dot git. If you hit enter, now this will remove the git repository, and now you can initialize an empty git repository. Okay, so just that's pretty much it. Now you see this is not a git repo at all. Thing looks pretty good to me. So just keep coding, keep loving, keep shading, and peace.